I would encourage anyone listening to have courage and to be able to speak out on behalf of yourself or behalf of the person next to you.
I'm Susan Goss, and as a seasoned therapist of more than 15 years, I'm honored to have had the opportunity to gain so much wisdom from so many people and love passing that knowledge on to others. So join me and some of my favorite friends as we share some tangible truths with you.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Tangible Truth Podcast. I'm Susan, and I am so excited to have with me Natalie, and we are going to continue this month. This is the National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're wrapping it up for the month of October with a very special guest on our last episode, Natalie. And Natalie, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. We have had a magnificent month of guests. Listeners, if you've not heard any of them, please start back at the beginning of the month and catch up. It's been a really good, informative month and interesting and heartwarming all at the same time. But Natalie, please introduce yourself to our guest.
Yes. Good morning. It is such an honor, Susan, to be here with you this morning and to be joining your list of amazing speakers that you've had on this very critical, heavy, but amazing opportunity to share with your community and to talk about these hard things. And so my name is Natalie Tibbs. I have been with the Children and Family Advocacy Center for 18 years now, and I have been given the privilege to lead the agency for the past 9 of those 18. And our agency responds to child abuse allegations within our community. And we serve the primary victim as well as the entire non-offending family members in those situations. We have advocacy support, we have counseling services, we have forensic interviews, we have medical examinations, and we also have residential housing. And all of our work was founded off of the shelter services that we provide in serving moms and children who were looking for restoration from difficult situations like domestic violence, like homelessness, sexual assault, just trauma within our area, and needing to find respite and needing to find healing. And then opening the Children's Advocacy Center not long after that, realizing we needed to provide services much sooner because of that generational cycle of abuse, and needing to work with a multidisciplinary team to be able to effectively serve them through that difficult time. And so our agency overall has been serving this community for 35 years.
Oh, wow. Natalie, 35 years.
Yes.
That is so amazing. What amazing work you do. Can I just say, I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
I really, truly am. And I'm so proud of the agency and how needed it is. Can I ask you right off the bat, how do people get to you and how do they find out right off the bat?
Well, we're often this first phone call that is made once an allegation
by who?
By the multidisciplinary team. And so once someone within our community is making a report of suspected abuse, whether it's to local law enforcement or to a state hotline, we're that next phone call that's being scheduled in order to get that family there to understand what really is going on. We want to eliminate what is considered a field interview and talking to kids in places that are not neutral or that aren't child friendly. So we want the child and the family brought to our agency where that wraparound services can be provided from the very beginning. The investigative team can get what it is that they need and continue on with the investigation, where our primary goal is to ensure that their needs are being met from the very beginning to however long they'll let us be part of their lives. And so the community can call us and let us know that there's a suspicion, and we'll walk them through what steps they need to take, whether they're a mandated reporter or not.
Okay.
We want to help walk them through that process because it can feel very scary and vulnerable. But most of the time, we're receiving phone calls from our local law enforcement agencies or child maltreatment investigative agencies.
So if someone were to call 911, the 911 calls you.
The 911 call would go to that local law enforcement agency. They're going to identify where the abuse is likely occurring, where the allegation is, to ensure it's under the proper jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
And then whoever's assigned to that case from that moment will then contact the Children and Family Advocacy Center to set up services.
Okay, great. That is a great thing to know, listeners. And so I hope you are listening. That is the go-to. You are the standard that they call from the police station.
That's correct.
From 911 calls police, they call you.
That's correct. The detective or patrol officer, whoever's assigned, is going to, and this is really, as you mentioned, what's been identified as best practice when it comes to any type of child maltreatment concern, because it brings a wealth of professionals to surround that child and to ensure that they are getting access to the care that they need. It's, the situation itself is vulnerable and it's hard and it's difficult, and working with children on their developmental level in a space that makes them feel safe and comfortable is critical. And the very nature of the Child Family Advocacy Center is designed or evidence tells us that it has reduced an average of 15 interviews of that child victim down to the one interview.
I 100% believe that. I remember the day where the child had to be interviewed multiple times. And so now this is narrowing the focus down. And what we call that in therapy, and I know it's what it's called with you, is continuity of care. And so that is where the child can get to one location. And in that one location with you is continuity of care, because there's a team that is working together. And so that is what we're talking about, listeners. It's a wonderful thing. Now, what I love, and is what I talked with Megan about last time, Megan Taylor, who works with you at times, and is the continuity of care, a team working together that's so beautiful, is you're also working with the family, which you're also working with adults.
That's correct.
So now let's go there. So if you've got an adult, let me give a scenario. If you are a neighbor and you're living next door to some suspected abuse, maybe it's not a child. Maybe it's not a child, Natalie. Maybe you suspect that a wife is being abused by a husband or something, and you've sat on it for a while and you just can't take it anymore because you're scared to. You've sat on it because you're scared. What do I do? What do I do? I don't know what to do. If I do this, I've just never done anything like this before. All these thoughts go through people's minds sometimes. I've never done anything like call in something. This is none of my business. I've heard lines like that before from people, but then they finally decide to do something. What do they do, Natalie? And who do they call?
Yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that in those situations, human nature wants to tell us, no, maybe I'm making this up, or maybe I'm not understanding the dynamics, and I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get anybody in trouble if there's nothing going on. And so we tend to keep to ourselves, but we forget that we may be the only person that has a chance to help someone get out of a very unhealthy situation. And, when it comes to adult abuse, it's much more difficult because the individual has to be willing to file the report and be part of that process. And when it comes to child abuse, we can report that suspicion. We don't have to get permission necessarily, because we're talking about the protection of children, and children don't often understand what it is that's normal or not normal, and what they don't even understand what abuse is. But when it comes to adult, we don't have that same luxury in being able to call a local law enforcement and say, hey, I believe this is happening. That's where it gets a little bit more tricky. But any time there's a situation like that and you really just don't know what to do, walking again through a crisis hotline and talking to an advocate and someone who's trained in this field is still highly encouraged, because they can help identify what some steps are. So there's national hotlines, there's local crisis hotlines as well. And we encourage people to do that. But I also think it's just the power of being able to be seen and with that neighbor and developing that relationship of creating a safe space where that neighbor can build rapport and to build trust, and to say, if you ever wanted to talk about anything, I'm here. I see you. I want to help you. And just being, that could create so much just safety and being able to say, okay, there's a safe person that maybe I can talk to about what's going on, and build a network. And that way together, that the individual who's experiencing the violence would feel confident enough to be able to report it, because now what they thought was being swept under a rug, it isn't.
Yes, you're 100% right. That's what I tell my clients, that that's validation by another person, that they're not crazy. It is happening.
Right.
Because a lot of times when there is abuse in the home, they begin to think, wait, is it my fault that I'm being hit? Wait, I'm being told it is my fault.
Right.
So maybe it is. If I do something better, I won't get hit. So I'll be better, but I am still getting hit. So maybe it is my fault. And so if a neighbor does begin to form an alliance with a neighbor, and they do begin to have a validation piece, that, okay, wait, there is violence in this home. I am being hit. Okay, because you do lose all confidence.
Right.
And so what you're saying is that does matter. It does matter, even though they have to call it in as an adult. And by the way, can you tell the listeners what the age is? We always talk about underage and then adult. What in the state of Arkansas, what is that age?
Well, children are considered children 17 and under.
17.
Yes.
Because you hear different ages.
Yes.
And it's 17 and under.
Yes.
That you can call in.
Yes, that's correct.
And you don't have to be a mandated reporter.
That's correct.
Okay. That's
yes.
always.
Now, for state of Arkansas, the age of consent is 16. And then there's also a consideration of a 3-year age difference. So if 14 and 17 are having a relationship and it's consensual, they're probably not going to do as much with that. But by the time a child reaches the age of 16, then they're considered to be old enough to be, or at least for the state of Arkansas, able to consent to sex with anyone, which is difficult to process as a parent myself. But
me too.
Yeah,
it's very difficult.
It is. I would never want to discourage someone if they feel like there's a child in a vulnerable situation. Don't worry with the ages and I would always just stress to report and let the investigative agencies decide if it's something that they can accept and investigate or not. Yeah. And, even when it comes to the neighbor situation, I never want to discourage anyone from reporting, especially if it's a current crisis that they feel is going on in that home, and having police go do a welfare check. I mean, there is nothing wrong with ever saying, I think there's something going on over there right now, and it seems to be a safety situation. Police can do a welfare check and just check on things.
Right. And Natalie, is this right? This is what I do as a mandated reporter, and you don't have to be a mandated reporter to do this. But what I have found is if I feel like I really should, there's something going on. Now, I'm very open with my clients. I will say I feel like I need to call this in. I want to have an open relationship, an honest relationship, and we talk through it. No surprise, in other words. but sometimes they take the call. They say, no, this is not a
Right.
whatever term that they call that. Like this is not one of those things you call in. And I'll say, okay, will you write my name that I've called it in?
Yes.
And because what I have found is like, if I called it in because I deem it a callable, whatever, that may
Right.
not be a word, offense, and they don't take it. And they don't take it most of the time because of the age. Like that it'll be over, they're past 17
Right.
or whatever. That's the only reason. And I'll say, okay, but then if you call it in, or if you've already called it in, or another person, and I'm like the first one, and then maybe 4 other people called
right.
in, then they go, hang on, 4 people have called in about this person. We need to go investigate. That's why I say, okay, but you're going to write my name. Oh yeah, your
That's
name's written down. And so that has happened before, that I'm like the 4th person, and they go, oh, we're going to go investigate.
Yeah.
4 other people have called.
Yes, so they'll document the phone call, and that just as you're saying, that does create a trail. And mandated reporter or not, but especially mandated reporter, we always encourage, do your due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't accept, then that's okay.
Right.
But you've done your due diligence to ensure that it has been documented.
Yes.
And then, yes, sometimes it does build a case just by multiple phone calls.
That's right. And then they finally go, hang on.
Maybe we need to check into this.
Maybe we need to go to that home.
Sometimes it's left to feel like you have, as a mandated reporter, you have to know more information or investigate a little bit further. And that's the last thing we want for anyone who is suspecting abuse or maltreatment, to feel like they have to go get more information, because that can be a really difficult situation to do. And so we don't want anybody going back to a potential victim and saying, hey, I need to know more about this, unless you're in a situation like a counselor where, they're able to process that.
Right.
But, even at a school setting, the last thing we want is for a teacher to feel like they have to be questioning children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the whole point of the investigative process, is to work with that multidisciplinary team that you mentioned. So sometimes this is all you have. And if it's not enough, you continue to build that relationship with that individual, and hope that something more begins to reveal itself.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing loud and clear is, you do not have to be alone.
Oh, absolutely.
You do not have to be alone. A lot of people feel, and you know this, Natalie, a lot of people do feel alone, and especially those that are being abused, male or female.
That's right.
We have a lot. Megan and I talked. There's been a lot of upshift in my couple therapy where men are being abused. And so we get a lot, and Megan said same in her practice with couples. So you feel very alone, and you feel embarrassed and shamed because you don't want to hit back. So that population has grown, Natalie, that abuse. And so you've got adults, you've got children, a lot of violent abuse attack. The first 2 episodes, there was a brutal attack. So there's got to be, what I love about the concept of the continuity of care, as I said before, is the team approach. Because, our book that I just love here sitting on my shelf, The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yes.
I love it.
It's a great book.
It is a great book because, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It keeps the score. The process that you go through at the Child and Advocacy and the Family Advocacy Center, that is the holistic approach to the investigative process of healing.
Yes. We really say that is what makes us unique, is that we provide this comprehensive, individualized, trauma-informed response. And not a single person or family is coming to us because life has been great.
Mm-hmm.
They're all coming to us because they've experienced some form of trauma or maltreatment, and they deserve and need that response that's going to impact their mind, their body, and their soul. And it needs to be individualized, because how you heal from trauma is going to be very different than how I'm going to heal from it. And we've got to be able to have resources for each of those for the clients that we're serving. We're serving on average anywhere around 900 to 950 children a year just here out of Benton County. And then we have capacity to serve up to 30 residential clients of moms and children within our shelter. But it's a long-term shelter. We're not looking for them to have to pick up their pieces in the next few days. I mean, they're just barely out of crisis in the first few days. And when we talk about restorative healing, that takes time. And so the average stay in our residential program is anywhere from 6 months to a year. But Susan, you touched on something that I wanted to make sure it was very clear. Anytime anybody is in a situation that is not safe and not healthy for them, the first thing they're going to say oftentimes is, am I making this up? Am I crazy?
Yes.
Is this my fault? Nobody will believe me. Nobody will understand what it is that I'm going through. And I think if there was any message today, it's that you're not alone, and that there's a team of people who want to support you and help you navigate through that situation. But you're also not alone, in that there are people who have experienced what it is that you're going through, and maybe not the same story, because each of our stories is very unique. But I butcher it every time, but there's such a powerful quote from Brene Brown about when we choose to bring light to these situations, when we force shame out of hiding, that is when we really get to see change and just the courage that takes. And so I would encourage anyone listening to have courage and to be able to speak out on behalf of yourself or behalf of the person next to you, because we should care about the well-being of each other and each other's safety. And there's so much power when we choose to be able to talk about what it is that we've experienced.
Absolutely. I love her.
Yes.
That's a wonderful quote. That's a wonderful quote. And that's what you do. Bring light.
That's right.
And that's where the enemy lives in secrecy.
That's right.
We're bringing out the secrets. That is a beautiful, beautiful quote. I love that. And y'all join together. Just a little bit about that. And that's why you've grown so much. You joined with Restoration.
That's correct.
Village.
Yes.
And tell me exactly when that happened. That's just for my information.
Yes. So Restoration Village was founded in 1989. The Children's Advocacy Center of Benton County was founded out of that work in 2000. And then in 2023, we brought both of those critical missions together under one operating model. Because when we say we're a one-stop shop, we wanted to truly
be the one
that. Exactly. And let's remove barriers for our clients. Let's eliminate redundancies in services. And if we're going to be expansive, let's be expansive. God has given us beautiful land where we're located, and we have so much opportunity, and it just made sense for it to all come together.
Well, that is absolutely phenomenal, because I love both. And now you're together. And I knew it was just not long ago at all.
Yes.
And it wasn't.
No, so just last year.
Yeah.
It's been a journey.
Yeah. When you birth something, that was like us in the Joshua Center. You birthed a baby.
Yes.
So that was awesome. I'm just so thrilled for you. And I think this message is a message of hope, actually.
Absolutely.
When you need help, you know where to go, listeners. And you've got good information too. If you're out there and you feel lonely and you feel afraid, you know who to call, what to do. If you see something going on, you know what to do. You got to
say something.
And you do have to say something. There's hope in that, and there's power in that. I so appreciate the information. So many times we don't know what to do. And here's my line. You don't know what you don't know. So therefore, you do nothing or you say nothing. And so now you have the information. And Carrie is going to put all these numbers. Do you suggest you put the hotline numbers?
Yes.
Okay. Natalie will give Carrie these numbers and she'll put them in the show notes. And so listeners, you will have them. So this was a great podcast given and done by Natalie. So we appreciate you, Natalie, so much. And we're going to have you back. Natalie has a miracle story. My son Jake calls it, "Mom, we're in miracle territory." And I love that line he uses. He's got his own story about that. We all do, but Natalie's got a special one. Natalie, will you come back?
Oh, it would be such an honor to be back.
I love you, Natalie, and I love the work you do. So thank you for joining us. And so listeners, we love you and we will see you next month. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Tangible Truth Podcast, part of the KLRC Podcast Network.